Okay, I think we'll do the standard thing and kick this off with introductions. Why don't you guys go first, and then I'll be the humble moderator, introduce myself last.
So I get started. My name is Hubert Birner. I am managing partner of TVM Capital and Life Sciences. We are one of the longest standing European-based life science investors, having a big interest in biopharmaceuticals as well as medtech. I think that's why I'm here today for the latter part. And I'm very excited to speak again on a panel at LSI. Great to be here.
Thank you. My name is Carolina Aguilar. I'm the CEO and co-founder of INBRAIN Neuroelectronics. And we've been in the field for 5 years. It's about brain-computer interfaces using an advanced material called graphene that can deliver real-time precision neurology.
Okay. Good afternoon, Anita Watkins. I'm the managing director for Rex Health Ventures. We are the corporate venture arm for UNC Healthcare. We invest all across the healthcare spectrum, but particularly excited to be here again at LSI, focused on med device and now therapeutic intersection.
Great. I'm Steve Pham. I'm a clinical assistant professor in emergency medicine at UCSF. A serial medical device investor, innovator, and operator in the space. I was previously building digital stethoscopes at Echo Health, as well as currently working on a patch called Proton Intelligence for continuous potassium monitoring. But my normal day job now is I'm Chief Digital Medicine Officer at ZS Associates. My role at ZS and a lot of what our business is trying to help pharma and life science companies overcome go-to-market frictions. Sometimes it's in the clinical development phase, and sometimes it's on the post-market approval. But a lot of times what I end up doing is bringing deals to investors and innovators such as the folks we have up here. So I think that's why I was asked to moderate this panel. I think to kick things off, I wanted to first start by talking about sort of where we are with the intersection between life science and medtech. Where in particular is the innovation occurring? Are we seeing, I'd love to sort of hear sort of the diversity of opinions here. Is it that we're replacing drugs by more targeted interventions? Are we combining or co-developing, drug delivery or other types of devices that help support medications getting where they should be or making a better impact synergistically? Or are we just a way to get more drugs into humans without directly delivering it? So, for instance, improving the upstream funnel, such as diagnostics. I'll stop there, but I think that's where I'd like to start. What do you say?
You guys look this up.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I think those are 3 really great examples, but there's so many more. One of the spaces that I'm really excited about, we just invested in a company called Reprieve Cardiovascular that is taking a well-known drug in the heart failure space and essentially automating the clinical administration of that drug based on the labs and the vitals. It's a closed loop system. And at least what we saw in the feasibility data is a 2-day length of stay reduction and improvement in readmission. So it's a win-win for the patients. So what I'm really excited about is the ability to automate using med devices to automate the administration of drugs that we know are safe and we are needed, but to take that clinical burden off and the patient actually having better outcomes.
Yeah, the way we are looking at it is you have a disease that has a continuum of care. You have an early diagnosis. You have when they are chronic and neurodegenerative, for instance, like Parkinson's disease. After diagnosis, there is a very long journey until you have several alternatives and drugs stop being effective, right? So this is where actually devices could reach for pharma that period where actually you could deliver incremental revenue if you don't have the right molecule. But then recently what we're seeing is that devices, for instance, we are about brain-computer interfaces and bioelectronics, and we have a collaboration with Merck where actually technology like ours put in the vagus nerve could actually manage organs, and they could be all a therapeutic target that could be synergistic with drugs or a replacement of drugs in some cases in very large indications. I think we just saw the FDA approval of Setpoint Medical in rheumatoid arthritis. That is a very real current example of what this can do.
Yeah, I guess the other aspect that you may not have covered is that the world is moving to new modalities in pharmaceutical treatment, away from just simple small molecules or antibodies. Remember the mRNA era we went through together. Cell therapy has a renaissance right now. And I think these new modalities are very important drivers of device innovation because, if you simply take, for instance, cell therapy, used to be super complicated to have this ex vivo productions and all of that. And now we're seeing more and more mini factories, the bedside solutions that make these therapies more accessible, more acceptable, and also more usable by the physicians and the patient. And I'm actually very confident that this intersection, especially as we're moving into very exciting new modalities, is a huge field also for investment for us going forward. Yeah, because this complete uncovered field at this point in time.
Yeah, I think this is a great diversity of examples, right? So, Anita, I think, Reprieve is very interesting to me too. I've worked in the heart failure space. I see these kinds of patients all the time. And I think the class that I would call that would be like closed loop medications powered by devices, right? And the larger sort of superset beyond that would be effectively letting a set of devices detect and then make decisions almost in an automated way, right? That's essentially the closed loop. I'd be curious to see, is that affecting your investment strategy of how it seems like it's the first investment in this kind of closed loop fashion. How do you think about investing in these kinds of devices? Because what's interesting here is that the CPT code is probably where you're going to reimburse. There's no drug incentive. No pharmaceutical manufacturer is making that much money off of Lasix except for auto injectors, which is another kind of closed loop, right? So I'm curious, how does that affect your investment strategy?
So I think there's a couple of things there. So we've invested over the years in companies that were pursuing both a new device and a new drug indication. Really, really hard to do, especially when you're running two parallel regulatory processes. We've also invested in companies that were looking at new modalities, microneedles. We all saw 5-6 years ago the microneedle patches. I think where I'm most interested right now, and this is really across the board as we look at a health system. So for those of you that aren't familiar, the UNC is the University of North Carolina Health System. It's a very large health system on the East Coast in North Carolina. We're never going to be able to hire enough to meet the demand of the patients that we're seeing. So looking at automation and all kinds of applications within the health system and drug delivery and patient treatment being a really important one. So if our investment lens has changed, it is definitely over the years pushing more towards looking for that automation. That's going to, patient outcomes has to be at the first and foremost has to be the intended outcome of the company, to improve those patient outcomes, and certainly to reduce the amount of time they're in the hospital. But anything that can automate what is now a quite heavy as you've treated the patients, very, very time intensive for the clinician.
Yeah. And, what's interesting is that your investment lens is on the health system side. And, this is still a business, right? And previously, if you are prescribing Lasix or you're injecting it, that's actually a loss of money to you, right? You're losing money on
every single patient.
In every injection is nurse time, et cetera. Now, it sounds like you could flip that model and generate revenue through CPT, or I don't know if there is a strategy beyond just saving time for this.
The goal, the initial goal will be to for the patients to be able to go home sooner. Right now, it's 7 to 9 days for every patient. So not only is the health system losing money on each patient, but that patient's quality of life is obviously being dramatically impacted from a length of stay. And then you also increase the risk of hospital-borne infections. And I mean, these are very, very sick patients. So there's a lot of win-wins on this type of investment for us.
Yeah. Well, that makes me excited because I'll win here too. And so, in the same theme, Carolina, like how do providers and health systems win with, a BCI or the future of a brain-computer interface? A lot of this stuff can happen outside the hospital. So I'm curious, where are the wins for you?
Yeah. So there are two angles to look at that. I mean, on one hand, what we are seeing is that in the past, medtech has been very mechanical. We had pacemakers, we had implants on our body that were not capturing data or not giving data back to patients to empower them and have better outcomes. Now we're going to have extremely intelligent implants that are going to be diagnosing and treating like a mini neurologist in your body and the whole body, real time, and not actually giving you the data on your status or even the recommendation that you have to actually do to get better. And that can be paid by outcomes. I think at some point, and this is our goal, is to be paid by the outcomes that the systems generate and not by the systems. And if you can do that, the value equation is outcomes that matter to patients divided by cost. So if we increment the outcomes and then we are more efficient because these patients don't have to come back to programming or to reevaluation as often as the others, then there is efficiency gains. And on top of that, we are avoiding, for instance, falls or other complications that translate also in long-term savings. So it's better outcomes, efficiency, short-term savings, and long-term savings. I mean, it's a no-brainer, never better said.
Yeah. A lot of those kinds of outcomes, like pharma doesn't have the reach for, right? Like this, the reason I'm sticking on this kind of thinking is that the value that's generated by pharma is usually captured only by pharma, right? Which is why pharma is, the 800-pound gorilla, right? And usually dwarfs med tech. But what I'm looking for are ways to think about value that's generated by med tech that's unique that pharma would never be able to touch. And one thing that you point out here, that along the same theme is this cell and gene therapy. I do a lot of work in that space. It's much more becoming an engineering task, right? It's the stack is becoming not so much, even though it's med tech, it's not necessarily built for purpose therapeutic. It's more like an engineering manufacturing technology to then build your final therapeutic. I'd love to hear sort of where the wins you're finding on the revenue generation and outcome side. Like, are provider systems, health systems, why do they buy into this? Because it's a very expensive task for them.
So I think as a prelude to the answer, I'm pretty excited actually right now about the multiple device applications that can help control the application of pharmaceuticals. Yeah, so take a simple example. A couple of LSIs ago, I was approached by a few guys who had this new kind of sensor you put under your arm to measure your insulin on a minute basis on your iPhone.
Oh yeah,
and then it's kind of a speed of light. This thing is moving on. Then now there's new technologies that link your insulin level to a implanted device that injects the medication that's needed. And at the same time, now I'm trying to answer your question. What this really does is creating a really exciting awareness for the patient of causality, of things, how they work together. Because in the old days, you took a drug in the morning at 7 or before breakfast, and that was it. You had no clue actually what's happening. What are you doing, right? And in a time when you're married to your iPhone, you see a lot of these kind of, and just take the next generation. We're the old guys, right? Or at least I'm the old guy. This is a very important element to become more data-driven and causality-driven. And I think that is where medicine is going. And I see a lot of activity now in the European healthcare systems. Obviously, in the US, they are ahead of us already. But take some very slow healthcare systems like Germany or France, right? They are embracing these new technologies at the speed of light because they see a lot of costs that can get out of the system by integrating device diagnosis and therapy. And we're just at the beginning of it, right? I mean, another great example is now take the new diagnostic technologies for early Alzheimer, for instance, right? They had been irrelevant as long as there was no drug to treat early stage Alzheimer, or to define exactly what is early stage Alzheimer.
Even diagnosing it.
Even diagnosing, what does it really mean, right? And what makes me kind of really excited is that the more we move on in exciting drug development, the more pharma understands that they are dependent on the device industry to be actually be really successful. Because all of a sudden, it's not just against Alzheimer's, it's a very specific targeted approach. And this is the precision we will need at a very affordable and transparent cost. And this is why I think we should talk again in 10 years. It will be pretty, as you said, we'll have a lot of stuff implanted in our ears, in our foot, in our butt, or I don't know where, to make our life and the life of our doctors much easier, right? So,
yeah. Well, so
I hope I answered your questions.
Well, no, yeah. And I'd love to follow up on that data piece because I think that's really important because pharma doesn't have or generate data, right?
No.
But they are the most sophisticated consumers and acquirers and buyers of data, far more than any other class that I've seen. And and they generate the most revenue, right? And so what ends up happening is then they need to come knocking on medtech's door, investors' doors, other people's doors to get the data that they need. And I think the next round of questions I'd like to ask is, how is it perceived on the medtech side when pharma comes knocking? You know, I used to run M&A for Roivant for medical devices, and I'd sat on both sides, and I'd also operated with an Echo. So I've built devices, and pharma came to us, and then I was pharma, and then I came to med devices. My personal opinion is that pharma does a really bad job. I think we come asking for a lot from medtech and other ecosystem partners. We kind of demand a lot, and then we ghost and never lead to any revenue or deals, et cetera. And that's a lot of my work at ZS now is how do I make those deals happen? So I'm curious, like, you know, on the medtech side of each of your businesses, and we can start with Anita, you must have a broad purview of a lot of your portfolio companies. When has pharma successfully knocked on a door of your medtech and led to something meaningful? Or do you have to be the investor that arranges the handshake, perhaps between two different portfolio companies, or you bring in the bigger whales? I'm curious.
So historically within our companies, it has been a pharma first company, and typically it's a phase 2B, 2A asset, and then they're looking for a way to better administer it. And it has been, I mean, it's not been easy for any of the companies. I mean, one of my companies, it was a new drug and a new device, and FDA does not have a pathway for companies trying to solve for. I mean, and the unmet need they were trying to solve for is nuisance bleeding. So everybody that's on a blood thinner, you get a nick. I'm sure anybody in here has experienced this. Hours later, you're still bleeding. Well, this was development of a simple device and a reformulation of a known drug, TXA, that works. I'm sure you've used it in the ED. Reformulation of that drugs where you can just hold the drug on.
Can I get a free sample?
Exactly. The regulatory pathway to get that done. And then also the complications that came about within the clinical trial, because it essentially is a drug clinical trial of how to administer the drug. Certain cases, the data was confounding because is the device keeping the drug from working as it should, or is the reformulation causing the drug not to work as it should? And so the difficulty around regulatory pathway, that has to be out there in this conversation. And it's something that if we want to get to the point of 10 years from now of having the ability to administer drugs very easily and safely for patients, FDA's got to evolve their processes. But on the other side of that, we have seen really great partnerships of, especially in our ecosystem, where you have a lot of med device and you have a lot of therapeutic, you have just a lot of talent that you can bring together and essentially create a company around. None of my companies to date have, big pharmas come in and said, I want you to develop a device for this, mostly because that's not where we're investing in.
Yeah.
And vice versa, where our companies have needed big pharma to be at the table because they've got their own assets that they're developing.
Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of it is working independently, not even really thinking about pharma. And I think that's the way medtech should be, right? Like you should not be built for purpose for pharma unless you're like a cell and gene kind of manufacturing process where you need to solve a problem on the therapeutic side. I'm curious, Carolina, with INBRAIN, you mentioned Merck, KGA, and not to be confused with the other Merck. We always have to say that. That's a pharma, right? Traditionally a pharma. And I'm curious if you could sort of provide insight on why they wanted to partner or why you would think if they didn't reveal that to you, they may not have.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of angles here. So first of all, we wanted to unlock the 400 billion market that there is behind bioelectronics and neuroelectronics. And I've been working in Medtronic for 13 years, and it's been way too small market compared to the opportunity. So we were thinking, how do we do that? And what is beyond what it's being done by Medtronic, Boston Scientific, and Abbott? So that was one line of thought. On the other hand, I think Merck, KGA, it's a very different pharma company because they have electronics as well. They had all screen and semiconductors. So they are already on the verge of the electronic side.
Yeah.
And they were also thinking, okay, it's getting more and more expensive to develop new molecules. And there is this other world here that we have not explored that can have a huge opportunity. So they were going around the world to do a search about how to do precision neurology in a way that it was really precise. And we happen to have this micrometric technology where actually we can be ultra selective on this one nerve that we're interested, that is the vagus nerve, that happens to manage most of our core organs. So they wanted to explore that. And they actually knock on our door. It's a process. I can't tell you another day because it's a funny story. But basically everything fit together. The deal was very pharma style also, very
I want
fair.
to know this piece, yeah.
Yeah. So, you can have a sublicensing path, eventually you can have an acquisition path, but it was always very fair. Otherwise, we'll never have done it from the beginning. We were being born, actually. It was 4 years ago. So it was literally when we were founding INBRAIN. But the deal was actually so fair, and they've been always so fair, that it was totally worth it. And at the board, we decided we're going to make another company called Nervia that is going to hold this collaboration, different IP, different legal entity, and all very clean in case it doesn't work. Yeah. But it's been 4 years, a lot of great preclinical work, a lot of great data. And now they are in and doubling down towards humans. And hopefully, this is a big success story because it makes sense. Now we can modulate targets that we didn't think that we could modulate with that sensitivity. Yeah. And no drugs, so no side effects, right?
And I love this story because, pharma is not usually humble, right? Mm-hmm. And if you look at a lot of pharma pipeline, they assume that what's undruggable can be druggable in the future, right? So this is actually quite a humble move. And what's also interesting about this story is that my experience on the other side is that life sciences tends to end up not necessarily destroying med devices, but when they come knocking, they can influence the med tech company in a negative way, right? Mm-hmm. Distract from the original investor thesis. Mm-hmm. They can also provide incentives. Oh yeah, let's throw a few $1 million here, but if you need to grow and hire to capture that million, and it takes you away from the original products, but you're the rare success story. So I'm happy to.
Well, we always thought about the platform company, and I know some people hate it, some people love it. We decided this was the way to go to actually unlock those 400 billion opportunity by just coupling different sensors, maybe some ASICs or, specific electronics, but common data labeling, data architecture, and data is very important here, by the way. And Merck AJ will benefit very much in the future for that data as well, which is what pharma naturally don't have. So
yeah, nice callback to the data thing, Hubert. So I'm curious, like, what are keeping in with the theme here? Any stories or examples where pharma has successfully knocked on any of your medtech companies, or synergies or deals that you've?
I think the prominent fields is neuro and diabetes, for obvious reasons. And what I'm following a company which I haven't had an investment yet, but it's becoming more interesting the longer we go. They are in this whole field of neurostimulation, right? And neurostimulation had a kind of a bad connotation for, at least when we were studying medicine, was like kind of a little bit voodoo, right?
I thought it was science fiction when I first heard
it was. That's a much nicer way of putting it than voodoo, yeah. But honestly, I think the field is moving on, and it's becoming more and more credible. And the trials that are done, the effects they see on top of administering drugs and having all these additional features, a little bit like what you guys are in a related field, is very exciting. And I was surprised that I read a little bit coming up to this panel last year. About $300 million went into companies that do neurostimulation. Would you have guessed? It's amazing.
I've heard this number. Yeah,
it's amazing, and across Europe and the US, right?
Yeah, and it's still growing.
And it's still growing, and people see a real benefit, and there's a legitimate benefit in that, right? So that is one I want to point out that CNS in general is a field where we see more of that. CNS also has been a field that has been plagued by lack of cooperation by the patients, by lack of visibility for the physicians, what actually happened to them, and then I think smart devices will take away a lot of that uncertainty, especially in fields like schizophrenia and in fields like depression, right? And I mean, you know yourself. That is something I really look forward to. And I believe that is all part of the same picture. It's an area that there, and you used to say there are devices actually that can be like a medical treatment.
Oh yeah.
So neuro is for me probably the place to be in the future. And now the other one I as I said on our call when we had this preparation is I'm pretty fascinated with the speed of light the whole diabetes world is going now. Yeah. And take the anti-obesity syringes and all of that. This would be even more automated, as you said, right? I mean, having a syringe once a week, you're going to have a device that just delivers whenever it's necessary. It's monitored, shows up in the doctor's office, shows up on your iPhone. And we're not even there yet, because we will see a lot of ability also to measure the side effects, the negative side effects of pharma will hate that. No, seriously, they will hate it. But I think the patients owe an answer to that, right? And there are very well known side effects of Ozempic or Mounjaro. Let me just spell it out, right? I mean, it's like nausea, lack of sensation. People lose the ability of taste and all that kind of stuff. And the benefit for the patient, for safe drug safety, is also buried in the use of proper and smart devices. Yeah, don't forget, that is something I really look forward to, because it will make us use these exciting new drugs more responsibly.
Yeah. I'm fond of saying that to really know what the incentives are behind the what's driving decisions on pharma, look at where they're not spending money. I've never worked a project related to uncovering side effects for any of my life science clients. Anita, I think you wanted to say something about the neuro.
So on the neurostem side, one of our other recent investments I'm really excited about, and this isn't treatment, but it is replacing pharma. It's a company called Synaptrix, where it's a neurostem device stimulating the sciatic and femoral nerve prior to TKA, and the patients are seeing up to 20 days of pain relief. So no opioids, no, no anesthesia. Not anesthesia,
Yeah,
yeah.
I get it.
And that to me is really exciting use of neurostem, where we can take patients off of opioids. I think that one of the things that just occurred to me is one of the reasons Herbert and I were probably selected is because we're some of the few funds that are investing in that intersection. So in addition to FDA needing to create some more flexibility in the regulatory pathways, we need more funds that are willing to look at this intersection, because I'm raising money for one of my companies right now, and the response we're hearing is, well, we're device.
Yeah.
We don't really play in that space, or we're biotech. We don't really play in that space. And I think we need to really advance these technologies because there is an incredible opportunity here. We need more funds that are willing to cross over that intersection.
Yeah, I love that. I think, this leads to sort of the last topic I wanted to talk about, which is sort of where do you see the future of these two, right? Like, I'm already excited because I'm a doctor. And even though a lot of the technologies that have been mentioned on this panel are going to replace some piece of me, that's great. It frees me up to do even better, greater things.
Can spend time with the patient.
Yeah, that's what I see in the future. But I'm curious, and then to follow on the regulatory thing, one piece that I would add to the future, which I think hopefully will happen for med devices, but on the digital health side of things, there's a recent regulatory guidance on something that FDA has put out on something called PDRS, which is prescription drug utilization, something, I forgot, RS. Anyways, the idea is, like, prior to this classification, if you built an app, you were either in this weird dichotomy of SAMD or not.
Right.
And what people were realizing is if you're a digital therapeutic and you have to go through the same phased studies that a pharma life science asset has to do to prove that you're a therapeutic, you might as well just not invest in that company to start, right? But now you have not only a guidance on how to do this without having to do a full clinical study. In many cases, PDRS can be achieved completely without a study, and it has to be done with a drug, by the way. So it's wrapped around the drug. So it's kind of like a combination. So you have a SAMD/digital app wrapped around the drug. Not only that, they have built in an incentive for pharma to play nice, because it will extend pharma exclusivity of the patent by 2 to 3 extra years if you achieve this. But you have to be first in class, which creates an arms race, right? So I think that there will be a future of this for devices as well. It just seems natural to me that a diagnostic or a monitoring technology or a drug delivery system can also work in the same kind of way. So that's what I'm projecting for the future to answer that regulatory question. Maybe Caroline, if you can talk a little bit about what you see for the future, or what are excited about for pharma and medtech.
I think the future, actually the present, is about convergence. I mean, I'm seeing semiconductors, advanced materials, biology, and AI coming together. For very long, I got VCs telling me, this is technology looking for an application. But technology has been driving the world. I mean, who needed a computer? Who needed an iPad? There were not needs. The need was created because of the technology being able to do things we could never dream of doing before. And this is happening on medtech now, which will be more tech med in the future. So I think the future will be more tech med and would be converging and creating synergies between med and devices in ways we've never seen before as well, and in a much more productive and outcome-driven way. Because, we've seen patients having enormous complications because of the fluctuations drugs take. With technology, these fluctuations will disappear. They will make, a seamless transition, from one drug or one treatment to the other. They will empower patients. They will reduce costs for the healthcare systems, and hopefully, will make us still more humans, because we will be less dependable and less, we'll have less anxiety, because there will be something in our bodies or outside taking care of us in a much more productive way.
Awesome. I love that vision. Hopefully, though, with still me in the picture as a doctor somehow.
No, we will converge as well.
Yeah. Oh, I'll be part of it. I'll be a cyborg too. That has already happened, by the way. Augmetics with the glasses and ambient scribes. But Hubert, curious to hear your vision.
So my view of the future is that the 21st century is gonna deal on the pharma side with some of the massive problems we've had in the history of mankind. Right? Like we had the antibiotics in the last century. We will solve a lot of the cancers by the end of the century. I don't want to sound like John F. Kennedy, but that's a real belief.
Yeah.
And you're on the way to crack some of the real bad brain diseases like Alzheimer's, ALS, and anything that's out there, right? So and we need pharma. Pharma will have an important place out there, and will drive innovation. However, to bring down innovation to patients, will be heavily dependent on the medtech industry, and the medtech industry has not realized that yet. They need to wake up, right? And I think a key element will be how the medtech industry is going to lobby the payers to include them in the delivery or in saving money on not spend too much money on all these very expensive drugs that will definitely make a difference. But I think the medtech industry needs a better lobby. That's my point. Yeah.
A better
lobby. A better understanding what actually their place is in the value chain. Because right now they look at I mean, you go to these conferences here, and I go to a lot of biopharma conferences like you do, and people here, they're very close in a very close society, but they don't think big enough, in my view, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is what needs to change in medtech. And the medtech entrepreneurs and the medtech investors, including ourselves, including myself, need to find smarter ways to do exactly what you said. Is how do we bring these technologies together and create more time for the doctors to deal with their patients? And that is my vision for the future. Is we have wonderful technologies on the medtech side. I mean, if you go out there, there's like 200 AI-driven companies that I would like to meet with me. I can't meet them all, right? But using their technologies in the right way also to help deliver drugs or to help deliver therapy is the future. And we need to think much more in a much more integrated fashion, right? And as I say, I like the tech med part better than the med tech part. And then the next part is the tech med pharma, right?
Yeah.
So that's what it is.
So I give a lecture specifically about this topic at Berkeley and UCSF, and I call it medtech as a service, because actually I think the piece of value capture that medtech traditionally does not do well is in actually delivering the care, right? They build a widget, they sell it as a widget. Maybe there's razor blades with it.
Leave it for somebody else to deal with it.
and there's no, and what happens is you give it to the users who may not be best trained on it, or you need to send sales force out there training them every year, and that's expensive. That's crazy that needs to be spent, because you're giving the service up to somebody else. You, doctor, do it this way. And as a doctor, that's frustrating also for me, because if I didn't get that training or retraining or materials on instruction manuals, all this stuff, the value I'm able to capture or deliver from the device gets diluted. And on top of that, there's all sorts of other issues of data interpretation. Let's say there's data that gets generated from it. am I the best doctor who knows how to interpret that? No, you probably have doctors internally inside each of the med tech companies that know way better what the signals, what the data, what you're supposed to do with that. And so, yeah, I love this vision because to me, it's like this thing I've just been banging the drums on for several years now, which is like, part of my French, but like also med tech companies need to grow some balls and deliver some service. Like stop just being a widget. Anyways,
So
hopefully that's controversial enough to inspire last comment.
No, go for it.
from an investor perspective, saying medtech services, you just reduce the margin and the
I know.
trade value.
I know this is why I would be a
I
terrible
like the
investor.
PEC Med Pharma.
We need more billion and trillion medtech companies. So
Yeah.
I mean, just to vision of the future, I do think, I mean, we've touched on so much here, but I do think delivering care, and I'm very focused on how a health system delivers care, but delivering care in a way that really does take the clinician out of it, if it can, is got to be the way of the future. We're not going to hire enough. We're not going to train enough people. So,
right.
Any last comments, Carolina?
Well, I had a whole nother topic, which obviously didn't have time to. But,
Ooh, you want to dangle a little
no,
teaser?
I just say it and then we'll do it next year.
Okay.
And is how can we use medical devices to make drug development more effective and cheaper? Huge topic.
Let's do that next year.
Keep it on the list and we'll talk about it. But I think there's a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
For that. It's a huge opportunity out there for that.
Yeah.
And we didn't have time to cover it, but if you are a CRO or a combined group of CROs and you bring this all properly together in a standardized patients population, so you can take a lot of systems out of clinical trial work. I think that is a topic for us as investors as well.
Yeah. Carolina, last comments?
I think we're out of time. No, thank you, and hopefully together we'll make it to the billion range.
All right.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.